King Attila told King Thidrek how much damage King Osantrix had been doing to him for a long time, both in the killing of man and in laying waste of land. King Thidrek replied and said that this would be avenged while he was staying in King Attila's kingdom, for we shall not endure it. Not much after this, messengers came to King Attila with the news that King Osantrix had come into his kingdom with a large army and was burning buildings and laying waste to land, and that he had killed many men. When King Attila and King Thidrek heard this, King Attila said, "All of my men shall know this, and we shall now prepare ourselves as quickly as possible. We shall ride to defend our land, and let every man show his mettle." And King Thidrek spoke now to his men. "Master Hildebrand, you shall carry my standard, and all of our men shall now be prepared to offer support to King Attila. It will be shown at this time whether the Amlungs dare to give him support." King Attila rode out of Susa with all of his army, and with him rode King Thidrek and Markgraf Rodinger. He had 10,000 knights in all. They moved their army to the place called Brandinaborg. The town had earlier been taken by King Osantrix, and he had killed many men. King Attila and his men stopped here. King Osantrix was there with all his army. Now, when King Osantrix found out that King Attila had arrived there, he prepared his army and rode out against King Attila. When they met, and both sides were ready for the battle, one could see many fair helmets and new shields, white byrnies and sharp swords, and many brave knights. King Osantrix called out and asked if King Attila and his army were ready to fight. He called out now the advice that the Huns should defend themselves bravely. And he then spoke to the Vilkina men and said they should fight bravely and no one should flee. King Thidrek of Bern answered and said, "You, King Osantrix, will soon find out that King Attila is well prepared. But first you shall meet with a force called the Amlungs, and then you will meet the Huns. Defend yourself, because those have come here to seek your life." Then he spoke to his men. "Attack well, good men. I expect that they will kill few, and that we shall be victorious. And we shall show our strong support for the first time to King Attila." Hildebrand rode forward with King Thidrek's standard, and struck on both sides and felled Vilkina men, one on top of another. Right behind him rode King Thidrek, and the Vilkina men fell on both sides before him. His kinsman Ulfrad followed him most bravely, and after him came the rest of the Amlung army. The Vilkina men fell before this army wherever they advanced. Master Hildebrand carried King Thidrek's standard so far into the army of the Vilkina men that they rode through all the rows of their army, and then turned back through them and killed Vilkina men one on top of the other. And they spent the whole day in this fashion. King Osantrix now saw what was happening, and rode hard against the Huns and killed many men. and the battle thus brought great loss of men on both sides. King Osantrix rode at the vanguard of his troops and did much damage. Ulfrad, a kinsman of King Thidrek, rode now against him with his detachment, and they had there a hard battle, and before it ended, King Osantrix was killed. And now that the king had fallen, the Vilkina men fled the field, but the Huns pursued them and killed so many men that few escaped. King Attila now had the victory, but yet lost 500 knights in the battle. King Thidrek had lost 50 of his men. And King Attila now rode home with his army, and he had freed his land of the Vilkina men. The Vilkina men took Herdnid, the son of Osantrix, as king. King Attila had not been home long when he heard that King Valdimar of Holmgard, the brother of King Osantrix, had come into Hunaland and was harrying with a large army. It happened one day that King Thidrek was standing in the highest tower, and he could see far and wide in Hunaland. He saw much smoke and much fire across a wide stretch of land. He went to King Attila and spoke. "Arise, sir, and prepare yourself and all of your men. I have seen that today King Valdimar is burning many of your farms and many fair towns. He is doing much damage in your kingdom, and if you do not wish to meet him and defend your land, then he will come here, and you will have to fight anyway, unless you wish to flee." And King Attila stood up and had all the horns blown. And King Attila now rode out of Susa with his army. King Valdimar had taken a powerful castle from King Attila, and he had taken and bound there a good knight, the messenger Rodolf. He had killed 1,200 men in all, and burned 1,200 villages and 15 castles, and taken much money and many men. And when he heard that King Attila had assembled an army against him, he fled back to his own country. King Attila now traveled with his army and collected all the dukes and counts and knights and all kinds of men. And when he was ready, he traveled to Rusiland and wished to avenge himself. As soon as he came into Rusiland, he fought and burned everything, wherever he went, and he did much damage. King Valdimar heard what King Attila was doing, and he collected support from all his kingdom and set out against them. He met them in Vilkinaland, where King Valdimar had much more support. And now both sides planned the battle. King Attila arrayed the Hun army and a standard against King Valdimar, and King Thidrek set a standard against the standard of Thidrek, the son of King Valdimar. They rode now together and fought valiantly, each against the other. Didrik of Bern rode before the middle of his troop and struck Rus on both sides. Thidrek, the son of Valdimar, rode at him, and now the two fought together so that no one could offer help from one side or the other. Each gave the other strong blows and many great wounds. they fought with the greatest ferocity and arrogance. And Thidrek of Bern had suffered 9 wounds, and Thidrek Valdimar's son had 5, and they were all large. Thidrek of Bern rode now as hard as he could, and he did not stop until he had taken Thidrek Valdimar's son and bound him. They now heard a great cry from the army, and become aware that King Attila was fleeing with all of the army of Huns. Thidrek of Bern called out loudly and grimly, "All of my men, turn back and fight. I shall not leave the battle in this way, and you can still gain victory if you will show what you are worth." And he rode forward hard and struck on both sides, and all of his men followed him bravely. King Attila had lost 500 men from his army, and he fled at this time so that he could escape to Hunaland. But Thidrek of Bern fought all that day, and he had lost 200 men. Yet, King Valdimar had lost more than 2,400 men. Thidrek sought now, with all of his men, for the place where a castle had once been, and which was now deserted. Thidrek went into the castle with his men. King Valdimar and more than 12,000 knights surrounded the castle. King Thidrek fought every day with that great army, and killed many men, and did much other damage as well. Now, when Thidrek and his men had a shortage of provisions, he contrived with spies to find out that King Valdimar and his army were eating. He had 500 of his knights armed, and he sent half of them out with his standard. He sent the other half out of the other castle gate. The Rus realized that they were coming from 2 different directions at them, and they shouted a great war whoop, and King Thidrek had all his horns blown. King Valdimar and his men thought King Attila and his men had come, and he fled with all his army. Thidrek and his men killed many men, and they took much food and wine. And when they had gone a short distance, King Valdimar realized that it was only a simulation and a trick of his enemies, and that King Attila's army had not come. He turned back to the castle and besieged it until King Thidrek was completely without provisions, so that they ate their horses. The next episode of the Thidrekssaga will tell if King Thidrek of Bern was able to get himself and his men out of this situation. So thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here in the Hall of Sagenheim.